Hello, Humane Marketers. Sarah Znakrocha here. Welcome to another episode of the Humane Marketing Podcast, a place to be for the generation of marketers who cares. This is the show where we talk about marketing your business in a way that feels good to you, is aligned with your values, and also resonates more with your conscious customers because it's not pushy, ethical, and also beautiful. So if you're a regular here, you know that I'm organizing the conversations around the 7 Ps of humane marketing. And if you're new here and this is your first time, welcome. I'm so excited you're here. You may want to download your one-page marketing plan with the 7 Ps of humane marketing in the form of a mandala at humane.marketing/one page, the number 1 and page. So again, humane.marketing/one page. And with that, with no further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. Hey, Zaynub, so nice to speak to you, see you on video, and talk to you on this conversation today.
Thank you, Sarah. It's nice. Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You and I discussed kind of this topic, very special topic to me, and I know it's special to you as well, that I mentioned in the intro to this episode, and it's all about Ubuntu. And I kind of quite work my network to have someone speak about this topic, because obviously I wanted someone who's really grown up with it. I told you when we spoke before kind of about my rebranding story and how this notion of Ubuntu and shared humanity was coming up just, kind of in a serendipitous way. And I was like, that's exactly what I want for marketing. I want it to be more about Ubuntu. So that's kind of the topic for our conversation today. But I'd like to have you share first a bit about your story, your growing up in South Africa, and probably also how Ubuntu was part of that, maybe unconsciously, because as a child, you don't know what that, what you're growing up with, what kind of philosophy, but maybe looking back now, how did that feel?
And so I grew up in South Africa in the 80s. And it was very much, as you said, as a child, I wasn't really sure. I didn't even know what Ubuntu meant and what it was all about. And growing up in a community as we did, I mean, back in the 80s, South Africa was still under apartheid, right? So communities of the different races, we all lived amongst each other. And I remember now as an adult, I always think back to, that was one of the beauties of apartheid, is that people found like a shared value system amongst the fact that we were all kind of, of the same race. That's how we were just divided, right? So that was a blessing in all of that. But also, so in the late 90s, I lost both my parents and I was orphaned by the age of 12. And how my mother came from she's from a Malay family, Cape Malay family, and my father's from an Indian family. And so we basically grew up under, with a very big Cape Malay community. And my mother's sister lived with us at the time, and my mother's other sisters all just decided, this isn't an issue, we're just going to take these 3 kids in, and they're just going to be a part of our extended families now. So her elder sister lived with us, and by then she was already a pensioner, and she wasn't working. She got a government grant every month to look after us. And I think after speaking to you and just the parallels with your own story of of the hippie culture, it dawned on me that we did exactly the same thing. It was one person looking after other people's children. And that happened whether or not people were orphaned or people didn't have children or they had too many of their own. There was this culture of everybody just come, everybody's just welcome, and that was something that was it was just a rule, an unspoken rule. So when my mother's sister looked after us, it wasn't how am I going to do this? It was, I am going to do this. And I think that's just how I've always seen it as, you know, it just is possible when you want it to be possible. So she was one of the people in our community. Other friends, family friends, also just pitched in. We were 3 kids who we weren't teenagers yet, and we didn't want for anything. Well, I'm not saying we had everything, but we did have enough, you know, everything, that the basic needs, we had everything. And when I look back at that as an adult, and I think of how people sometimes have both parents and don't have everything, you know, and so I always consider myself to have been very fortunate to have been raised in that way, with the culture of Ubuntu.
I have this picture of just, one big family, lots of kids. You described mainly family relations, but I imagine that also went, you know, above that and like included neighbors and people who were not blood related, right?
Yeah. So actually that is also very funny, because sometimes, like, we would just call everybody auntie and uncle, whether or not they were blood related. And I have a neighbor there are many neighbors in our street, and none of them were related, but they were all aunties and uncles who pitched in, who either took us to school, paid for something at school, supported us when we needed something bought, you know, and yeah, so I think there was that sense of, so the neighborhood, everybody looked out for each other. Even today, you know, if I go on holiday and I'm going away, I ask my neighbor to watch the house. And I don't get somebody to come in and house sit or anything. The neighbors are there, they're watching, they know who comes and goes, they know who your family is, and that type of thing. And then also it extended to the schools, you know, so my mother had formed relationships with our school teachers. They knew who we were. People talk about you to somebody else. So it did extend to more than family. Friends became family.
Yeah, it's so funny when you were talking. I just remembered also, you know, my hippie childhood, and it was the same exact thing. Like whenever someone left on vacation, well, of course you were feeding their pet now and watering their plants and, you know, getting their mail, and everybody had like this little job. Oh, I'm going to be doing this now for them. That was just a given. It was just so normal that we left each other the key. Where today, I'm lucky I have a neighbor across the street where we can do that. And I can even go over there and ask for eggs and, you know, flour if I don't have it for my cookies. But it's not everywhere like that, you know. It is still kind of like, you know, kind of trust and so it's
and I also think not only is it not like that everywhere, I don't think everybody is like that either, you know. So I do have one neighbor who never asks us to watch her house. She'll go away, and so she probably just doesn't share that. But then the others do. So I have also noticed that as somebody who's grown up with that, wherever I go, I kind of do that. So if I've lived away from, I'm in Cape Town at the moment, and I'm from Cape Town, but when I lived in other provinces within South Africa, I'd always have a neighbor that I'd become familiar with, that I could reach out to if I did need something, which I've learned is something special about me. Like, I do that. I look for those connections with people to get to know them, you know? And so as a result, I think I get that back as well.
Yeah. I also think it's maybe worth sharing that it's sometimes hard as well if you're the one trying to reach out and then kind of find yourself being blocked on the other side. Like I see that with myself, with the direct neighbors, you know, there's no openness. And so that is sometimes very hard on me. I feel like our neighbors, how come we're not even sharing, you know, something? And my mom as well, they moved into an apartment building now where kind of like everybody does their own thing. And I can see some sadness in her sometimes, like, you know, she's like, I just want to have their kids over for lunch sometimes. And luckily she now found one family that she can do that with. And during the lockdown, she was so cute. She organized kind of a piano concert because she plays the piano. And so in the hallway, they just all left their doors open and she played the piano, and people were all, sitting in the hallways. Obviously they couldn't go to her apartment. And so she's like, oh, it was so special. Like, it really, she misses that connection that is very hard to build if people are just not used to it or open to it, right?
Yeah. And so I think the question is like, does it stop you when people are not open to it? Because in my experience, sometimes people don't know how. And I do have a belief that we all want that. So we do all want to feel connected to someone in some way. And sometimes it just takes somebody to show them. And even when I moved back to Cape Town, I had been I had this preconceived idea that I didn't fit in here. So when I moved back after being away for, I think, 17 years, I didn't have any friends. Most of my friends had moved on. I only had family members. And I thought, how am I just going to fit back in here? And I remember joining a cycling group, and people pointed out that I was very good at establishing a connection with people effortlessly. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that I'd done that. And that was the first time that I became aware of the fact that this is such an important value for me. I do it without even thinking that I'm doing it. And their response was very warm. And I thought, how do these people that I didn't know them from anywhere. I didn't even know them really long. I knew them probably about a month or two. And instantly I'd formed not deep, but meaningful connections. Mm-hmm. And their feedback was very valuable, because to them it was something so precious that they commended me for, kind of. So the humble me dismissed it, but then the real humble me was, I took it, and I was like, that is amazing, because I'm giving these people something they didn't know they wanted and they love having. Yeah. And so then I just keep at it. Even if somebody doesn't want it, I won't hound them. I mean, I'll leave them, but they know that I'm open. And if they're not open to connecting, then that's fine as well. I mean, but I still do make that effort because it's important to me and I love it. So I have to believe they love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny that marketing, because this is the overall overarching umbrella of this podcast is marketing, and marketing is connection with other people. And so you need to really show that you're open to this connection, because if it doesn't come over like that, well, then it's not a two-way relationship. It's just a broadcasting kind of ad type. Like back in the days, it's like, here's why you need to buy this, and buy this now, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And also like you said, so with marketing, I always get the sense of what's important to me. Is it important to you? And then if I get the sense, oh, this is important to you, I know you're being sincere and selling me something that you think you feel is important to me, Right. So
let's go back to, because you said you left and then came back, but let's go to you before you left. So you were, how old were you when you left South Africa?
So I left Cape Town first. Mm-hmm. I left Cape Town at the age of 23. And then I went to work in Joburg, which was a huge step for somebody in my community, because we didn't leave home before we were married. And I got a lot of resistance for that, for being ambitious and breaking a mold, kind of. And then I worked as an air traffic controller in Joburg for 10 years. Well, not in Joburg itself, but around Joburg.
How far is Johannesburg from Cape Town? Like, what do we...
It's 1,500 kilometers. It's a 2-hour flight.
Okay.
So it's not very close. And then I went overseas. I went to the Middle East in 2010, at the end of 2010. I was 33 years old.
I think you kind of just skipped over a big important step in your life, right? You're like, oh, I just became an air traffic controller. But I remember when we last talked, that was like a big deal back in the days for a woman to become not just a air traffic controller, but you tell us the story.
Yeah, so I think I that was also the family friend uncle who took a vested interest in me. I was I mean, like I said before, I was orphaned, so there was no dad or mom affording my tertiary education, or even any education for that matter. So for all intents and purposes back then, to me, with the exposure that I had, and my family was of a very humble background, we didn't do things like, go on to study at university and all of those things. But I had that huge dream that was what I was going to do. Despite the odds, I didn't even look at the fact that I didn't have the financial means to do something. I was just going to do something. And I got a lot of reality checks from people like, this is not going to be. And that uncle, who's a family friend, he was like, I can support you. Let's find out what it is that you can do, because, I do think that you're destined to go on to do great things. And we don't know what that is, but let's explore. And I loved that about him, because in some ways, I think he dreamed a lot bigger than I did. And I didn't think of leaving Cape Town, and he found something. And the first thing I said to him was like, oh my gosh, that's going to take me out of Cape Town. And he said, and you'll come back. It's fine. And so I felt very comfortable and very secure in the fact that he trusted and he believed in me so much. And so I went for it, and it wasn't easy. I went on to do, and back then it was 2000. And so South Africa was freed in 1990. 1994, I think we had the first open election. So people of color were suddenly, allowed to do a lot more than we had before. And so when I joined air traffic control, I was one of the second intakes only that included people of color. Everybody else had always only been white South Africans. And so that was a big thing for us to go on to do this. I hadn't been exposed to aviation in any way. It was a very foreign world to me, this flying stuff. And I'd never even been on an airplane, and I was 23 years old.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. And so now I was going to go on and tell pilots what to do when I didn't even know what it involved. So then, long story short, I qualified as the first Muslim female air traffic controller. And I worked in a lot of small towns, but that wasn't very publicized back then. They didn't make a big deal of it. Even my own family didn't make too big a deal of it, because I had gone on to do something that they didn't know. So I think there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of uneasiness around the fact that I was suddenly going. Even though they supported me, they didn't expect that. And so I think to an extent I did feel a little bit let down, but I also understood that this was just their own insecurity and not knowing that was preventing them from all of that. And I mean, further down the line, more friends that become family supported me. And so I've always felt, I've called them family, F-R-A-M-I-L-Y. And I always think that, these are the people that believe in me, that support me, that I can turn to when skies are gray and when I'm in a bit of a pickle and stuff like that. So, and then it was the norm for most of us to apply to go and work overseas, because as we became more experienced, we started chasing international experience and a career progression, and the Middle East offered us lots of money because they really did value the South African experience and the culture and our work ethic, which was which at the time I didn't realize how unique that was, that as South Africans, we had a reputation for being, easy to get along with, trainable, we were reliable, we were honest. All of those things, they absolutely loved it. And so we got headhunted by the Middle East often. And that's why I went.
It's so interesting to me that these are the qualities that came out of a country in apartheid, like that. It's just like mind blowing, right? And it definitely goes back to Ubuntu. I mean, because it could have gone the other way as well. It could have been, qualities like, I don't know, like, the opposite, basically, grudge, holding a grudge and being angry, and could have been those qualities, but no, it was all the Ubuntu qualities really that remained and made people of South Africa who they are.
And I think that's true for a lot of us. I mean, we do have the angry ones. We do have people who haven't benefited as much as some of us have. And I think that that's usually a mindset and an outlook. Because like I said, I mean, some of the good things from apartheid was that building of communities, that sense of we are in this together, we have each other, and not we're being told we can't live there. Because my family were directly affected by the Group Areas Act. They were kicked out of a very affluent area, off a thriving farm, and they were put into a very low income area on the dark side of Cape Town. And they were never bitter about that, you know.
Wow.
So because
Yeah.
they had each other. I think that for them it was a big thing that they had each other.
So coming from, South Africa, going to abroad in all these places, what did you, maybe by then you kind of knew about Ubuntu, or at least you knew, how you've been brought up. Did you see any of that in the other countries, or did you see how you were different and that something maybe was missing in these other cultures?
So I worked with a lot of cultures, to people from different countries. In the Middle East, the Arabs are very much, I feel, as well, Ubuntu. I am because we are, and we are because I am, and you are because we are, The Arabs had a very welcoming approach where they'd literally take you in to their houses and include you in their parties as somebody who just walked in. To me, that was so welcoming. That's so warm. They do know that we come and we contribute to their economy and to their lifestyles. And so I found a lot of similarities with us as African people that they shared, even though the Arabs, I might say this under correction, but they're not very pro-African. They don't want to be associated with Africans. But they share so many similar values, and I think that whole us, it's always, if you see Arab men, they're always a whole bunch of them together. Even the ladies, people don't operate like in singles really there. It's very much like, it's a come one, come all. And I love that about them. I did find with a lot more of the Western and European cultures that there was the me and I and individual approach, which was very different to how we are, even if it came to something as basic as sharing lunches, you'd have enough to share with people, and other cultures didn't necessarily do that. I also found a lot of the similarity with the other Asian countries like India's and Pakistan's and the Filipinos and those cultures. We all shared that whole everybody's welcome.
Yeah, and that's what we need so much more of in the business world now as well, right? Like, why do we have to do everything on our own as businesses? Why do we have to, kill the competition instead of unite and become stronger? And, I still always feel like there's enough pie to go around. So
yes,
we always, kind of.
And if not, somebody knows how to make it.
Yeah. So after you came back home, you then, I guess, eventually transitioned out of the air controlling and now have gone into something completely different.
Yes.
Tell us about that pivot. And again, I think it's interesting because when we talked, it felt like it's like a coming home for you. Like you finally realize, oh, yeah, it's true that I, not only did I come home to South Africa, but I came home back to my values that I now use in my work. Maybe you have done that subconsciously in your corporate positions, but now you really get to use those values and qualities. So tell us about the work you do today.
Yeah, so I just a little bit of a backtrack. Like I always felt as a South African out of South Africa, there was always an undercurrent amongst expats that we left South Africa, and that we didn't want to be a part of South Africa, and that we were leaving for a better life and things. And that was something that I always struggled with. It was never my intention to leave South Africa and never come back. To me, I always considered myself South African, and I was living away from home and I was enjoying the experience. But something about me this always feels like home. And I remember that there was noticed that there was an outlook that it was a them and us. So when as expats, we look at South Africa, it's that country is going down, and there's no hope. The crime is terrible. The economy is shut. They're the next Zimbabwe, the government's killing them. Politicians are corrupt and right. And so it was very much not owning, like, how do we change that? So it's that feeling of being empowered or are we powerless? And I never subscribed to being powerless. Mm-hmm. And coming back, I've since found the way to describe what it was that I felt back then. It's like I always feel that, there was that story of 4 people, everybody, nobody, somebody, and anybody. I'm not sure if you know that story.
Yeah.
So where everybody believes that somebody should do it, and nobody kind of steps up. But so I don't remember the story out of my head, but I believe that I am anybody. And how can I change? How can I contribute to changing South Africa? And how can I not leave my people behind? And how can I inspire the change, even if it's small, by what it is that I do? Because I do believe that it's so important to be intentional about how you leave people and what you leave them with, which is why I love your project, of the Gentle Business Revolution. Is like, how are we going to change that? How are we going to bring people, the real essence of people, back into what it is that they do every single day, so that we're not just, chasing paychecks and stuff like that. We're actually chasing, empowering people and leaving them better than we found them. So the work we do right now is we do a lot of personal development. So I now work with the Trust Connection, and we do leadership training, communications training, and a lot of changed mindset type of work. Mm-hmm. where we go from so empowering people to recognize their own unique passions and what makes them who they are and how they influence people within their own organizations. And see how we do that with a lot of in-person and experiential neurolinguistic training, as well as life coach training.
It sounds very similar to, what humane marketing and humane business and all of that is all about. It's like, let's help people first figure out who they are, so that they can then go out and share more of them, with their clients, or in your case with the employer, or just be the change they want to see in the world.
Because I think it does start with yourself. Like, as you change the world, you do need to know who you are, because, like, as our good friend Jean says, we are messages from the system to the system about the system. And so when we see that, we are a part of that. And so I do believe that, it's a very empowering skill to be teaching people to identify these things within themselves.
Yeah. So if we come back to marketing and business, if you think about, business the way it's done now, marketing the way it's done now, how can we, use this idea, this philosophy of Ubuntu, shared humanity, in a way that, helps us, but also helps everyone involved, including the planet?
So I think the first immediate thing I think of is to go from I to we, and so it's not eliminating the actual part of who I is, but it's that silo mentality, where it's about competition, and it's about only me, and it's about not asking for help, and it's about what can I gain and my own success and my own achievements, and not sharing ideas and not being open to ideas. That is part of a silo mentality. I think to get rid of that, and then going to more of a we, and how is it that I can support you and you can support me, and I can ask you and you can ask me, and how do I win because you win, And as I climb the ladder, or as I move forward, how do I pull you with me or influence you or make your life more, make it easier, you know? So in South Africa, we do have another saying, which is stronger together. I think it's a slogan they use with the rugby. So that's also something like, you know, what unifies us, what makes us stronger. And I think it's the sense of the fact that we do it together.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, you know, small signs that this is something that's coming more and more. If you think about open source kind of projects, but it's still like, you know, it's still more in the entrepreneurial world than in the corporate world, for example. So there needs to be these kind of impact pioneers that say, but this is the way. You know, I'm thinking of Elon Musk sharing all his Tesla information and saying, go ahead, you know, copy us. It's all good. The goal is not only profit, it's really having a world with only electric cars. Of course, he's so, you know, self-assured that he's like, well, we're the best anyway. But it's a good example that he kind of puts there and says, hey, you know, this is open source. And that's what I see as a part of it. And it's funny, isn't it? I think it's Linux, their open source is actually called Ubuntu. Which is just, that I don't know anybody who uses it, which is sad, but it's there, it exists. And so I think there's just much more work to be done in this kind of, you know, context. It's like, let's do things together. Let's bring people from different companies and work on things, on projects together.
Like I think Elon Musk and even the Apple guys are quoted as people who have tried to eradicate the silo mentality from their organizations. And so, you know, that unified vision, it's a big project that we're doing at the Trust Connection as well, with leaders in South Africa who are doing very meaningful work, and how when we share vision, even if it's not my exact vision, how me contributing to your vision ultimately achieves my vision, and how yours somehow influences mine. And so I think that unified vision, I think we all, no matter what it is that we're doing, I think at the end of the day, it all contributes to that greater vision. And that's, I suppose, doing right by humanity, and which is what Ubuntu actually means. It's what's it like to be, what is humanity, you know? So I think it goes through all cultures and all races and religions and countries and everything.
What that makes me think of also is this idea of ego that unfortunately is still very big in, you know, leadership. And I can't wait for my friend Penny Pierce. She's writing a book about the ego and how to let go of the ego. That's where the work is as well with leaders, right? What you just shared is so key. It's like, instead of just everybody having their own vision and saying, but this is my vision and I want the trademark for it. And, you know, it's like, why don't we, you know, get together, because your vision in the end is only like slightly different from mine, and let's just collaborate and do things together. So
and I suppose ego is always going to be a part of all that. Like, you know, I suppose it's a big part of the silo mentality, which is why people don't want to combine and don't want to share. And it's a totally different mindset when you recognize that your ego is fed in another way when you support somebody and when you do it together. Ego is not completely out of that. It's probably a healthier ego-driven motivation for something.
I realized that by writing my second book now about selling like we're human. I was like, well, I don't want to write it alone this time. You know, I wrote the first book alone, like, let's do it together. And so I, you know, put out a message to my community, and 5 people signed up to do a gentle sales lab. And we really came up with the content of the book together. I could never have done it by myself, or I could have, but it would have been a lot harder.
Much longer.
And it was so much more fun and joyful. And I also knew that the book was responding to their needs, right? Because in the end, that's the audience. I was like, wow, that was so much easier and fun. Yeah, it was really much more fun.
And then you have time to do the other things you want to do.
Exactly. And my ego still got a boost, you know.
Exactly. And that bit of you that looks for connection is there, and you're empowering somebody else.
It was amazing.
To me, that all contributes to my ego as well. It's the fact that I supported someone else. How amazing is that?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm speaking from a personal point of view.
No, but it's so true. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so true. I mean, isn't there a saying in empathy and kindness that it gives you just as much satisfaction to help someone else than being helped, right? And so this is kind of a similar thing. Yeah.
And so that's also something that we focus on at the Trust Connection with our entrepreneur circle, is where we asking for help and giving help, offering that. And and entrepreneurs, it's a stereotype, it's a generalization, but to say entrepreneurs don't necessarily ask for help, but to offer it and to take it back, that in itself is, even if you haven't asked for it and you just take it back, that's also quite powerful. And I think it's liberating to an extent as well. Yeah.
Wow, this has been wonderful. I really love that conversation about Ubuntu and shared humanity and all of that. Please do share with us where people can find out more about you and the Trust Connection.
So we haven't been around very long. We're still fairly new, and we constantly redesigning our approach to how we take on the training. And we do a very tailor-made program for whoever it is that comes to find us. We do have a website. It's called thetrustconnection.co.za. And at the moment, and then we also have a Facebook page called The Trust Connection. And we a 2-man strong team. And one of us will definitely get back to you, and we're happy to just to learn about who it is that looks for what it is that we offer, what it is that they need, how we can support them using the skills that we have, and just to enhance who it is that they are and what it is that they're after. So that's, at the moment, that's the only places you can find us.
That's already a lot, right? A website is all you need today. So we'll definitely link to that in the show notes. I have 2 more things I want to ask or say. First thing is, what are you grateful for this week or today, Zaynub?
What am I grateful for? I am grateful. I'm grateful for the people who believe in me and who push me to be as big as they see me. Because I don't see me that way, but I'm very grateful for that and their belief in me. And what was the other question?
And the other question has to do with something completely different. So I just want to say.
Oh, no, I thought that was a 2-phase.
No, it was not a 2-phase. So I love that what you just said about you not seeing yourself the same way that you want, like other people see the greatness in you and you sometimes don't see it yourself.
Yes.
I think so true, right? Sometimes it really helps to work with a mentor or a coach to kind of hold the mirror and say, but look.
So, for me, it's been so powerful because, I think also I was taught that seeing the greatness in you is arrogant.
Exactly. Same here.
And it isn't necessarily if you're using it in the right way, and if you empower, and if you feel that pushes you to be more and do more, then I think that it's a very empowering way to look at things. So I'm grateful for those people. Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, Trevor Noah, because I just keep thinking about him, and I think he also said, we called everybody auntie and uncle in his neighborhood. And so would you say that he's one of these expats that we, if he listens to this episode, we say, please come home? No.
I think he comes home regularly. I personally think he flies the flag really high wherever he goes. Like, I think he embodies South Africa, and he's just having a great time wherever it is that he is. So I always feel that no matter where he lives, we will feel a claim to him, and I think that I don't think he needs to be here for us to feel that we have him. Okay. So as an expat, I can fully support him being anywhere in the world and being South African. I think he's awesome. But I would say, It would be nice if he came home, but I wouldn't ever see him anyway, so it doesn't matter.
And it's true. And maybe,
Yeah.
he's still young. So right now he's just living it up, and eventually he will. I have a feeling that he will come home. So.
Yeah. And I think he doesn't lose who he is. Like, he speaks so many South African languages, and he gets the culture, he gets so he's got that humor that even if he's sitting in Switzerland, which, I mean, he's half Swiss, right?
Yeah, if and I'm always proud of that, of course.
Exactly. If he sits there and he talks about his grandmother in his home language, instantly the distance is broken. He is here. When he puts on the South African accent and he makes fun of our people at the airport, he's home.
No, he's just so much fun. So if you haven't read the book yet, highly recommend his book. It's just also gives you this, probably another kind of a deja vu, having just listened to Zaynub's story. It kind of gives you this deja vu. It's like, oh yeah, that's what it feels like.
That's
growing
true.
up in South Africa.
It is. And when I hear other people's stories like that, it just shows me how similar all of us actually are. And even, when I heard your story about how you grew up, to me, it's like, is there any difference? That if we were in the same country, to me, it would be like, we understand.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what connections are built on, is that relatability. It's that ability for me to put myself in your shoes. Yeah.
And even if we didn't grow up the same way, still kind of trying to get that perspective and say, oh, that's how it was for you. Okay, I understand. Yeah.
That's true. So I do also want to thank you for pointing out that Ubuntu mindset, in the approach for me personally. And as we spoke before, it was in a way that I considered had impacted me in the way that it has. And so for you to highlight something like that about the spirit of Ubuntu, it just made complete sense. And so, I want to say thank you to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing more of that Ubuntu philosophy. I think the world can definitely need more of that. Thanks, Zaynub.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching and being part of a generation of marketers who cares for yourself, for your clients, and for the planet. We really are change makers before we are marketers. So go ahead, be the change you want to see in the world. And I hope to see you again next week. Take care.